I'm Jeff Carter, president of the Richmond Symphony Orchestra Board, and with me is Jack Everly. Absolute pleasure to have Jack Everly here, and we're not in Civic Hall, we are in McGuire Hall, and so there's lots of questions. I think in Wayne County it has felt like I'm the only person who doesn't know you already, and so I've got a lot of questions about you, about Richmond, about your work, and obviously about the concert that's coming up this weekend. But Jack, it's great to have you here.
Thank you.
And tell me about this place, McGuire Hall. It's my first time here.
You're kidding?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. This is not my first time here. I have such fond memories of McGuire Hall. When I first came here with my parents, it was because my sister was playing violin in the high school orchestra in their production, first musical ever, of Oklahoma, of course.
Yep.
And I never got over that. I thought that was so special to see everyone coming together and performing on stage and in the orchestra pit. That really made a strong impression upon me. The conductor was Ralph Burkhart, I think sharing that with David Davenport. And so when I got to high school, I was lucky enough to be in the high school orchestra and ended up being in the chorus of the musical that year, which was How to Succeed in Business Without Really Trying. And I think that's where I developed kind of the ham that I am right now. But fond memories of McGuire Hall.
And to be back here at Richmond High School and to be back in Richmond, you've traveled so many other places and been to big cities and also probably some small cities like Richmond. Tell me a little bit about the travel from Richmond and the stops along the way.
Well, I graduated Indiana University School of Music and moved to New York City because I wanted to be a set designer or a conductor. You don't put those together very well, of course, as far as a career goes. So I studied both things at IU, and that's what I took to New York City. And after about 2 or 3 years of this job and that job in design and or piano playing and or conducting, I got a big break. It was a revival of Hello, Dolly with Carol Channing, the original star, and it was produced by the Houston Grand Opera and the Nederlanders from the Broadway scene, of course. So the plan was to tour for 9 months and then open at the Lunt-Fontanne Theater in New York. And so we were on the road. My job that I got, my big break, was as piano player and assistant conductor, which means that every 7th performance or 8th performance, whatever, I would conduct the show while the music director went ahead to the next city to rehearse the new orchestra. Well, about 3 months into the tour, the conductor said, okay, I've done this. I'm going back to Europe and conduct opera because that's really what I do anyway. And because I had been conducting the last show in every city, Carol realized I could handle the show and understood how she backphrased and things like that, and her timing of everything. So she said, okay, you are the next music director of our production. And that is how I made my Broadway debut at the Lunt in New York City at the age of 26. So that was a big deal and a big break, and I have thanked Carol Channing for that ever since. You know, bless her.
From Oklahoma to Hello, Dolly, the Broadway connection. You made a comment in there that you played piano, but then I also know you played cymbals in the marching band.
How do you know that?
You know, well, the details. So what about the instruments and the music? Because you don't just appear as a conductor one day, right? There's this journeyman story. So what about the music?
Okay, the music. I was I went to Pleasant View Junior High School, and Priscilla Sherry was our choral director there, and she was quite the taskmaster and so encouraging of people. So I was accompanying the choir and singing in the choir at Pleasant View. And when it came time to go to high school, I said, oh good, I want to be in the orchestra because my sister was, and I loved all things orchestra, of course. And I was told, oh, well, we don't need a piano player in the orchestra. I said, but I have to be in the orchestra. What do you need? And they said, well, we could use bass players. I went, okay. So I taught myself how to play bass. And thanks to the patience of the music director of the orchestra here, Ralph Burkhart, he was such a marvelous teacher in all respects that I was able to understand more so of how to play the bass, and then took that to IU as well and studied there. But I also wanted to be in the marching band here during the summers especially, and was allowed into the marching band and the concert band here because I played bass. So marching bands don't have upright basses, as you can well imagine. It's very hard to march for those things. And I said,
and the piano.
That and the piano, really murder. We tried it on wheels, but it didn't really work. So John said, okay, well, play in the percussion section. So great, what do I play? Cymbals, we need someone to play cymbals. Oh, okay, how do you play cymbals? All right, so I learned. And that summer, I believe, we came in second at the state fair competition. So I was like, yes, it was because of the great cymbal player, I'm sure. And in that percussion section was the incredible Jeff Hamilton.
Oh yeah, Jeff's fantastic.
Fantastic, one of the best drummers today in the world, and such a fun person to know, of course. I believe this week he's actually doing a jazz festival in Columbus, Ohio. He gets around, truly. So, you know, John Parshall put up with me as a cymbal player, and that meant a lot too. I learned a lot of discipline thanks to John. I learned a lot of passion about music thanks to David Davenport, the choral director here at RHS, and of course, patience and musicality with Ralph Burkhart. So I really have to hand it to those three teachers of music here at Richmond Senior High School. They laid the groundwork for me, and much of it was subliminal at the time, but I've drawn upon that all these years since.
I love that story, especially with the Richmond Symphony Orchestra, because core to our mission is not only the performance on the stage, but also inspiring a rising generation of musicians, hoping that there'll be young students that are at the concert this weekend, they see you, they hear the concert, and are inspired then to maybe pick up the cymbals, I don't know. But that's a piece of it, is inspiring others, and I love how you can just name folks, including Carol Channing, that have had voice in your life and opportunity and such on this journey. Now, a lot of places, so you're in Indy now, but also Baltimore and Naples, and you had your time in New York. And then as someone who was born in Washington, D.C., lived there for 20 years, know well National Public Radio and the Pops concert at the 4th of July and such. Can you talk about all of those other experiences that you seem to juggle at the same time, which I find amazing?
I love accepting a challenge, and just when you think, well, I think I've done it all, something else comes along, and you realize, okay, I haven't done it all, this will be new. And such was the case 11 years ago, I believe it is now, when Capitol Concerts asked me to assume the musical direction of the Memorial Day, the National Memorial Day concert, as well as the July 4th concert on the Mall there. It's a live telecast on PBS, of course, with the NSO, the National Symphony Orchestra. They're two very different things because the approach and the use of music. For the July 4th, it's more of a party, a musical party, and there's one guest star after another. Everyone from Renee Fleming, Kelly O'Hara, to Neil Diamond, Barry Manilow, and it's a blast. Every one of those acts requiring something different from the NSO, and therefore somewhat from me. Memorial Day, however, of course, is a very honoring tribute to the men and women of the armed services, and that, as far as inspiring music, yes, we do that. of course, but there is underscore with the National Symphony Orchestra, and I'm basically accompanying the actors and a script that heightens the emotions of the stories that we are telling. And that tends to be classical music as an underscore. And I'm so fortunate that I had so much Broadway experience, because in Broadway shows, there's always timing and underscore music with dialogue, and you time it all and make it fit. So that put me in good standing with understanding, okay, now we have to pace the music with the actors, and sometimes they're there for dress rehearsal and sometimes they're not. So you may go on the air live and having never rehearsed with someone just because of happenstance, or they may be inspired to talk slower or faster. So that's always a wonderful challenge, and the musicians of the NSO are so up for it. They change on a dime, and they're just terrific with all that.
So then you have in DC, and then also Indy, and you are a Hoosier. I mean, still you're living here in Indy, Naples, and Baltimore. But talk about your work in Indy.
Well, I started working with the Indianapolis Symphony Orchestra in 1994, while I was still living in New York City. They were looking for a conductor for the Christmas show that they called Yuletide Celebration. So I interviewed with the producer of that, Ty Johnson, and he said, well, we're losing our conductor currently. He got this job with the Boston Pops, so he won't be able to do the Christmas show anymore. I went, Keith Lockhart? Yeah. Okay, great. So I took a year off from doing Nutcracker with American Ballet Theater, and I did the Yuletide Celebration with the ISO for the first time in '94. And I thought, well, this is quite something. This is truly unique. It's like Radio City Music Hall meets the Ed Sullivan Show, meets everything else, a Broadway musical, all with a symphony orchestra. This is pretty great. But it's probably the last time I'll do that, whatever. Anyway, I've been doing it ever since 1994. It clicked, it works. I get to arrange music and I adore it. Of course, the musicians, they're just superb. And then they named me Principal Pops Conductor in 2001, and I had been there ever since. So with the advent of that, and then quickly Baltimore and Naples and Ottawa, I thought, okay, I've been in New York City for about 25 years. I will move to Indianapolis, and that's where I've been ever since.
Yeah, back to the Hoosier State.
Yeah.
So I don't think we're having fireworks this weekend. Not inside Civic Hall.
Musical fireworks.
But there'll be musical fireworks. Tell me about the concert this weekend and what you have planned.
Well, of course, the repertoire is all Hollywood, and it's everyone from John Barry, Elmer Bernstein, to, of course, the great John Williams, Ennio Morricone. It's a little bit of everyone, James Horner, because there's so much great music to choose from when it comes to film music. And I'm especially thrilled always to perform anything by John Williams. I've gotten to know John a little bit, and he's such a gentleman, not to mention, of course, a genius. He has a way of composing for the symphony orchestra that makes you understand the film, the characters, everything so much more deeply, and yet the music stands on its own. And there isn't a person in the world that doesn't know and love the music of John Williams. So we're going to have a lot of fun this weekend.
It's going to be fantastic. I'm sure large crowds, Civic Hall. What do you want the crowd to walk away from? So we've been in this season having candidates for the music director position, and so everyone's talking about the music director and who might be the next music director. So that's the conversation for those concerts. For this concert, what's the conversation afterwards? What do you think people are going to be talking about at the end of this concert?
What a wonderful experience it always is, hearing not only a symphony orchestra, but that the Richmond Symphony Orchestra exists here in Richmond. I mean, folks, I grew up on the Richmond Symphony Orchestra. I went to True Blood Fieldhouse when I was a kid growing up here and watched Manfred Bloom conduct the Richmond Symphony Orchestra. This is a big deal to have a symphony orchestra in the community. It's very important. It's a matter of quality of life, and that's what's so important, and entertaining, all at the same time.
I know people are going to be talking about you and have you come back. That's a big deal, having Jack Everly back to conduct our Richmond Symphony Orchestra. For you to come home and for us to one, hear the story of your journey, but then to experience your gifts on stage. So thank you. Thank you for taking time to come back. Thanks for this conversation and letting me know a little bit about more who you are. And my anticipation for this weekend is only increased. So thanks.
Thank you. This has been terrific.